Who among you dares question the fate carved in the lifeblood of stars long extinct? These were the words a forgotten cogitator prophet whispered deep beneath the cathedrals of Terra, their reverberation swallowed by centuries of dust and silence. Now that voice stirs once more, clawing through the eternal fog of the 41st millennium, reaching out from the shadows of Xeno's worlds and crumbling shrines alike. The Curse of Nekrosor, they call it an ancient affliction, older than the Emperor's truth, older even than the newest stars wrought by the God Machine's design. Here lies the tale lost in the catacombs of time, of the destroyer plague that twisted flesh and bone into instruments of oblivion across star systems, heralding doom in a language only the warp could hear. What unholy pact birthed this scourge? What blasphemy brewed beneath the iron skies before the Imperium's purifying flame? This is a chronicling of dread, how faith shattered, how hope fled, and how the universe's very pulse was torn asunder by a single cursed hand. The saga begins on the forge world of Grathel Prime, nestled within the shadow of the Macharius Belt, where industrious Adeptus Mechanicus cults worship the Omnissiah amidst ceaseless clamor of forge hammers. There, a discovery was made that would change everything: a tomb, buried beneath the planet's core, radiating a malignant energy unlike any sacred or arcane technology recognized by the gathered tech priests. With reverent awe, they unearthed an obsidian sarcophagus engraved with glyphs speaking of a forgotten Xeno's warlord. Nekrosor, a name that dripped venom in the hushed halls of imperial history. The relic pulsed with a dark vitality, and as the Omnissiah's servants breached the sealed crypt, the curse that had slumbered beyond the veil of time awoke, whispering promises of power too profane even to name. From the depths of warp and flesh, the seeds of the destroyer plague began to unfurl. Across the outer moons of Grathel, the first victims emerged hulking monstrosities, their bodies fused with rusted machine parts and throbbing with pulsars of crimson ichor. Their minds, shattered fragments of once devoted servitors and soldiers, churned with malice and hunger for the living. The plague spread with terrible swiftness, corroding not just flesh but the very essence of souls, warping gene seed and machine alike. Imperial Guard regiments sent to contain the outbreak faced only silence and ruin, their transmissions fragmented by warp interference and the distorted wails of the cursed. One by one, worlds caught beneath the destroyer's shadow fell to despair and carnage, the echoes of their screams swallowed by the void. Faith faltered. Prayers became curses, and the Emperor's light seemed to flicker uncertainly against the rising tide of decay. In the midst of chaos, a lone Inquisitor named Kaine descended upon the afflicted system, his armor etched with the sigils of the Art Malleus, and his eyes alight with grim resolve. Kaine's investigations led him to forbidden scriptures, lost cogitator archives, and whispers among the dark Mechanicum who spoke of Nekrosor not as a mere Xenos, but a god-fallen apothecary of the old ones, branded by the ruinous powers themselves. They deemed the plague a weapon of apocalypse, designed to unravel the flesh and spirit in one fell strike, a scourge meant to cleanse the cosmos of both machine and man. Yet, Kaine suspected something more, a corruption sewn into the very fabric of the Imperium's own salvation, a shattered truth awaiting the reckoning of the fearless. Driven by unyielding faith, Kaine embarked on a pilgrimage to the Cathedral of St. Resnick on Terra, seeking counsel from the ecclesiarchy's highest seers. The gathered sects offered fragmented prophecies, visions of a returning destroyer king who would usher in the final doom, and cautionary tales branded in blood. But beneath their words lay repression and fear, a secret kept from the masses, buried beneath layers of dogma and hidden in the Emperor's sanctum sanctorum. As Kaine delved further, he uncovered evidence of forbidden accords, ancient treaties contested by the Adeptus Custodes themselves, revealing that Nekrosor's plague had roots not in the stars, but within the Imperium's own storied past, a betrayal cloaked in silence spanning millennia. On the desolate moon of devours, where the plague seized its deadliest form, the lines between mortal and abomination blurred. Here, Kaine witnessed battalions of Deathwatch Space Marines fighting alongside warbands of Chaos Space Marines, an unholy truce birthed by desperation and terror. Both sides sought to contain or harness the destroyer plague, but none could claim dominion over it. The moon's atmosphere, blackened by warp taint, wove hallucinations and nightmares into waking life, revealing glimpses of what Nekrosor truly was, a celestial plague-bearer whose spirit was shattered and scattered, whose curse was a beacon calling to dark gods hungering beyond the veil. Even the staunchest warriors felt the weight of fate buckle beneath them as ancient rivalries dissolved in the face of extinction. Beneath the ruins of a once majestic shrine world, Kaine discovered the remnants of a hidden cult devotees who embraced the curse as a path to transcendence. They spoke in tongues insectal and profane, their bodies writhing with symbiotic horrors blessed by the warp's malefic grace. Their leader, a shattered psyker named Veshkar, revealed that Nekrosor's plague was no accident but an artifact of defiance, a rebellion coded into the Biomechanica to shatter the chains of servitude to the Emperor's cold order. This revelation struck Kaine with paralyzing dread. Was the Imperium's holy unity itself a fragile myth, an edifice built to hide a deeper rot? As Veshkar uttered the final incantation, the ground itself seemed to pulse with a malevolent heartbeat, as if the stars themselves were whispering an ancient lie. When Kaine returned to Terra, the shattered fragments of evidence collated under the glow of the Astronomicon only deepened the mystery. Hololithic readings showed an anomaly, a temporal rift within the Mecharius belt, a wound in reality where the destroyer plague's origin pulsed like a cancerous heartbeat, threatening to spread beyond time and space. Inquisitorial sanctuaries debated whether to seal the rift or use it to probe lost knowledge, but Kaine's dreams were haunted by a faceless shadow, a silhouette with burning eyes and a voice that promised revelation at the cost of endless damnation. The true nature of Nekrosor's curse now seemed less a disease and more a prophecy, a key to an inscrutable design conceived when the stars were young and gods yet mortal. Amidst this turmoil, the Adeptus Mechanicus declared a radical innovation, to forge a weapon of purity, a celestial crucible to burn the plague's corruption away. Yet the prototype, known only as the Iron Purifier, vanished within the warp during its maiden voyage, a silence spreading faster than any report. Whispers grew. Did Nekrosor's curse consume the creators as it had the worlds? Or did the plague now have an emissary walking amidst the stars disguised in iron and heresy? The Emperor's light flickered once more over Grathel and its shattered moons, yet no hand dared intervene where the Omnissiah's will wavered, where faith itself trembled fragile and broken. Kaine's final transmission before disappearing into the Mecharius belt spoke of an immortal revelation. This scourge is not the beginning nor the end. It is but a thread in the unraveling tapestry. And we have awakened a god that even annihilation fears. The hololith died mid-sentence, the chamber plunged into darkness, save for the quiet beating of a heart not his own. Far beyond the grasp of the Imperium's brightest minds, beneath levels of silence deeper than any crypt, a low rumble trembled, an echo from Nekrosor's tomb, signaling the curse was not a curse at all, but a summons. And in that endless night, the winds whispered a final, chilling truth. No plague can be contained when the destroyer himself walks once more among the stars, and fate's weave begins to tear. Beneath the endless expanse of space, a fragile stillness settled over the void where the curse breathed and bled. Within the silent sanctuaries of the Adeptus Astartes, whispers grew like shadows flickering beneath cerulean armor plates. Among the Ultramarines and the dark-winged Raven Guard, doubt whispered a seditious song, that the destroyer plague was no external corrupter, but a reflection of the Imperium's own failing soul. Chaplains, sworn guardians of faith, wrestled with silent prayers torn by questions too perilous to voice openly. The eternal light of the Emperor's will flickered uncertainly amid these soldiers, marking the first cracks within the sacred brotherhood. Broken veterans muttered of brothers claimed by plague and spirit, not just flesh, and of a creeping darkness that no bolt gun nor sanctified flame could purge. Faith was no longer armor, but scar tissue, raw and aching beneath the surface. Meanwhile, within the towering spires of the ecclesiarchy on Terra, political webs tightened like chains suffocating truth. Cardinal Veridanus, a shadowed figure whose influence stretched beneath gilded robes, maneuvered to suppress evidence of Nekrosor's true origins. To reveal that the plague's genesis was linked to secretive ducal conspiracies, and the clandestine experiments of the Adeptus Mechanicus would ignite rebellion across a fractured Imperium. His agents crushed dissent and purged records, while sermons preached unyielding faith and unity against the unnameable foe. But the tides of heresy rarely bled quietly. In the silent catacombs beneath the cathedrals, a forbidden cult of the penitent veil venerated the destroyer plague as salvation, torn between reverence and damnation. In these shadows, loyalty itself was a double-edged blade, cutting through allegiances forged in piety and fear alike. On the war-torn world of Jeratha IV, a shattered regiment of the Imperial Guard faced a grim truth not in the enemy they fought, but within their own ranks. Captain Ilara Vos bore witness to soldiers possessed, their eyes void of light, voices whispering in a language older than the stars. One by one, the line between servitor and man blurred. The destroyer plague had wormed into their very souls. Vos's faith cracked as she carried the burden of command, torn between the mission and the soul she could no longer save. Late-night confessions revealed whispered doubts. Was the Emperor's light truly eternal, or just a flickering candle against a yawning abyss? Even the most fervent warriors questioned whether righteousness was born of truth, or simply the will to survive the unending darkness. Within the hidden vaults of the Mechanicum's forge gloom, a secret council convened under the gaze of iron sentinels. Magos Zelther, a figure both revered and reviled, argued for harnessing the plague as a weapon dividing among its corruption, a perverse form of purity. He saw in Nekrosor not a curse, but an evolution, a gateway beyond flesh and machine, a next step toward a synthetic apotheosis. The council fractured, torn between orthodox worship of the on-Messiah and the mechanized heresy seeping through their ranks. Echoes of forbidden rites filled dim halls, and ancient cogitator spirits hummed warnings drowned out by progress and ambition. The line between salvation and damnation blurred, and in the flickering glow of furnace fire, the seeds of rebellion were sown in silence. Deep within the warp-stained battlefields where Imperial forces clashed with Chaos marauders, the nature of loyalty bore strange fruit. Brother Captain Malrek of the Crimson Fangs found himself haunted, not by enemies clad in heresy, but by visions of a different truth, a menace older than the Chaos gods themselves, lurking beyond the known warp storms. The destroyer plague was but a symptom of warp-born arrogance, a warning scream from forgotten gods twisted by millennia. Yet his revelations drew only suspicion, and the Inquisition's shadow grew long over his warrior band. To confess such heresy was to invite oblivion, and so Malrek fought not only the enemy, but the suffocating grip of the Imperium's blind faith, his soul, a crucible for doubt and iron resolve. At the fringes of the corrupted fleet known as the Black Covenant, whispered rumors spoke of an artifact recovered from the wreckage of Nekrosor's ancient tomb, a relic of power capable of binding the destroyer plague itself. Yet those who sought it vanished, their names erased even from the most guarded annals. Rogue traders and Xenos factions sought the relic for their own dark ambitions, deepening the galaxy's decay. The very act of pursuing salvation from the plague wove a darker web of greed, betrayal, and desperation. In this theater of shadows, allegiance shifted with the tides of opportunity, and loyalty became currency traded in secrets and blood. The broken faithful assembled beneath ruined cathedrals on worlds left to rot, their prayers torn between despair and superstition. Sister Superior Miriam of the Ordo Hereticus led rites not sanctioned by the ecclesiarchy, preaching a gospel that salvation lay not through imperial dogma, but through reckoning with the destroyer's truth. Pilgrims battled plagues of faith and flesh alike, their devotion a fragile flame flickering beneath the crushing weight of a universe indifferent to mercy. Miriam's sermons challenged the notion of divine justice, whispering that the Emperor's silence was complicity, and that salvation required embracing the darkness, not denying it. Heresy, whispered in hushed tones, danced on the knife's edge between salvation and eternal damnation. In the labyrinthine halls of the High Lords of Terra, clandestine debates erupted like relentless storms. The revelation that Nekrosor's plague had ancient ties to forbidden Xenos technology and chaos. Artifacts threatened to unravel the fragile peace maintained for millennia. Some argued for ruthless purges to erase all memory, while others saw in the Destroyer Plague a weapon to wield against their enemies, a calculated embrace of corruption to ensure survival. Behind gilded doors, alliances cracked and betrayals germinated like festering wounds. The Imperium's mighty machine hesitated, caught between preservation and destruction, while the echo of lost legions haunted their council's ghosts of a past better left forgotten. Meanwhile, the Adeptus, sworn to purity, marched through the blighted fields with banners crimsoned by blood and tears. Canoness Vilenia bore the weight of grim visions, glimpses of a future where the Destroyer Plague did not only consume the body, but birth an unholy legion within the Emperor's own sacred ranks. Her fervent prayers were met with silence, her warnings dismissed as despair or folly. Her order faced not only the crime of the plague, but treason among their own acolytes seduced by whispers of power, their faith bending to the dark promise offered by the curse. In the deepest shadows of their cloisters, betrayal blossomed in sacred vows broken beneath unyielding stars. The warp itself convulsed with unseen storm winds, bending reality where the Destroyer Plague's influence seeped deepest. Psychers trapped within these maelstroms spoke of a voice neither wholly malevolent nor divine. It promised knowledge unfathomable and a place beyond the cycle of death and decay. Yet the price was unspoken, a silent sacrifice demanded at the heart of madness. Inquisitor Kaine's name was whispered among those daring to confront the abyss, his fate a caution buried beneath worlds lost to ruin. Those who sought him found only echoes and fading traces, as if the Destroyer's shadow had swallowed his very existence without remainder. Then, as if the stars themselves conspired to rend the veil, a transmission hacked its way through the vaults of the Imperium's data spires. It bore a warning not from any known sector, but a voice cracked with despair, the last words of a splinter fleet that encountered the unseen chapel, a space-burned shrine dedicated to Nekrosor. Within its bowels, heretics clad in the guise of loyal servants performed rites that twisted scripture and flesh alike, invoking a grim revelation. The Destroyer Plague was not simply a curse, but a birthright, an inheritance sown deliberately into the Emperor's own bloodline by a cabal beyond time's reckoning. The message shattered certainty, throwing all who heard it into tumultuous doubt. Loyalty was not a singular path, but a labyrinth of lies, and righteousness often a mask for darker truths. As the signal faded, a last cryptic phrase lingered: "The curse is our salvation, or our undoing." Then came the silence. In the shadow of a dying star, Brother Captain Malrek knelt, his thoughts a tempest beneath the unyielding weight of his battle eldritch helmet. The distant light filtered through cracked armor, casting fractured halos over the bloodied ground of a forgotten battlefield. Here, time held no meaning, only the eternal question clawing at his soul: what is faith when the gods themselves seem deaf? Memories of lost brothers flickered like ghosts, each one a testament to hope squandered and purpose shattered by the encroaching void. The Destroyer Plague was not merely a weapon, it was a reckoning. And Malrek, torn between warrior's honor and a desperate yearning for truth, whispered prayers not to the Emperor, but to a silence that answered only with echoes of oblivion. On the shifting plains of Cicatrix Maledictum, Sister Superior Miriam stood amidst burning ruins, eyes gazing into the smoke-choked heavens. Her creed was threadbare, unraveling beneath the weight of visions that showed death not as an end, but a cycle twisted and eternal. Where once she saw divine justice, now she beheld only cruel paradox. The Emperor's light a flickering candle struggling against the darkness that was born from within. Her followers fractured, split between blind obedience and desperate heresy. And in quiet moments, Miriam found herself drawn to the forbidden texts of the penitent veil, where salvation whispered as seduction. Was the destroyer plague an unholy blight or a twisted balm for a galaxy too far gone to save? Far above, in the labyrinthine halls of the Mechanicum's pantheon, Magos Zelther traced fingers over ancient cogitator runes, glowing faintly with forbidden's power. Each glyph was a whisper from eons past, a fragment of knowledge too dangerous for mortal minds. The destroyer plague, he realized, was no mere corruption but a key and arcane cipher etched into the atoms of creation itself. Through it, the Omnis's design faltered, revealing fractures in the very latticework of reality. Yet with this knowledge came dread. To unlock these secrets might birth salvation or doom. As he prepared a ritual to pierce the veil, Zelther felt the cold tendrils of madness creeping closer, entwining with his very thoughts, a transformation more terrifying than the plague itself. Amidst the shattered bastions of the Black Covenant fleet, a lone psyker writhed in a psychic storm, her mind aflame with visions of cosmic design. Kaine's name echoed faintly in the torrent, a beacon of fractured hope. The destroyer plague, she perceived, was an echo of an ancient celestial fracture, a wound carved into the heart of the Imperium before time remembered itself. This fissure birthed not only pestilence but resonance, a frequency attuned to the alteration of fate. The warp-shrouded shrines spread their whispers like a cancer, and in their darkness lurked a presence neither holy god nor demon, but something older, something forgotten, waiting for the stars to bleed. Her cries for salvation were lost amid the cacophony of war, a solitary lament swallowed by the infinite night. Within Terra's obscured archives, Cardinal Veridanus found himself confronted by scrolls stained with forbidden's ink text so blasphemous they might unravel the Imperium's very foundation. These ancient manuscripts told of bargains struck before the Emperor's ascension, pacts forged with entities beyond comprehension to safeguard humanity's dawn. But the price was inscribed in shadows, a curse bound into the bloodlines of the nobility and sanctified orders. The Curse of Nekrosor was not a random plague, but a mechanism of control, an ever-present specter guarding a secret too terrible to face. Veridanus trembled before his revelation. To expose it was to invite civil war, yet to conceal was to strengthen the chains of delusion strangling humanity's soul. In the desolate wastes of Jaretha IV, Captain Alara Voss stood over fallen comrades, morphed beyond recognition. The grotesque fusion of flesh and machine whispered of a mutation purposeful and perverse, as if the destroyer plague was not an agent of destruction, but a tool of crafting, a sinister sculptor shaping the future of war. Voss's heart, once steeled by duty, cracked beneath the weight of this insight. The line between enemy and victim blurred, and with it, the meaning of sacrifice and honor dissolved. In whispered moments of solitude, she questioned whether the Emperor's beacon guided their path or blinded them to a fate far darker than death. In the echoing void between stars, a derelict ship drifted a relic from before the Horus heresy. Within its rusting corridors, a forbidden psalmodican hummed with ancient liturgy corrupted by a malignant strain. The voices of long-dead saints entwined with mechanical screams, a requiem for a past erased yet never forgotten. Here, the boundary between flesh and machine bled away entirely, birthing creatures half divine, half damned. Their existence was a living testament to the destroyer plague's evolutionary grotesquerie, a future forged in the crucible of the Imperium's hubris. The ship, veiled in shadows, awaited a herald to bring its dark gospel anew, heralding a transformation nothing could halt. Amongst the pilgrims of the penitent veil on the shrouded world of Zephyra, a revelation unfolded in whispered tongues. The curse was a path, an initiation into a higher form of existence beyond the Emperor's dying vision. Veshkar's disciples confessed seeing beyond the veil of decay to a transcendent tapestry woven with stars and souls reunited in a cosmic cycle, neither holy nor profane but elemental. Their faith stood at odds with the ecclesiarchy, but resonated with a desperate yearning familiar to many broken souls, a yearning to become part of something greater than endless war and hollow divinity. In the silence of Zephyra's night, such faith promised rebirth, but at what cost to the soul's final salvation? Within the council chambers of the High Lords, debate became a daggered silence until an emissary from the Adeptus Custodes revealed the most damning truth. The Destroyer Plague was not a rogue anomaly, but the culmination of an ancient project, sanctioned at the dawn of the Imperium and buried by the Emperor himself. It was designed as a failsafe against a cosmic threat, an entropy engine crafted to cleanse the Imperium in case of final corruption. The revelation shattered their collective veneer of control, leaving nothing but shadows and suspicion. Now, with the plague loose, the Imperium was both victim and executioner, its own hand poised above the switch of oblivion. No alliance could weather such truth unfractured. As the Adeptus Erotus rose once more for a purifying crusade, Canoness Valenia confronted the bitter paradox of faith dedicated to a light that might be an illusion, waging war to save an empire built on secrets and lies. Her visions darkened. Warriors once holy became vessels of rot and corruption, their zeal an infectious madness akin to the very curse they sought to burn away. Each battle became a ritual of self-annihilation, an echo of a prophecy none wished to speak aloud. In the crucible of war, righteousness fracture, no longer armor, but brittle glass waiting for the crack that would rend its soul. In the heart of the warp, the psychic storm tore apart the spirit of a name once whispered with reverence. Inquisitor Thelric Kaine, lost to the maddening abyss, his mind shattered into myriad shards scattered across space and time. One fragment carried a vision no living being should bear, a cosmic design, not of salvation but endless cycles of decay and rebirth, marked by the Destroyer's touch. Where hope was once eternal, now only inevitability remained, a fracturing spiral toward darkness without end. The burning revelation wreathed in the dying stars whispered of an unheeded covenant written into the bones of reality, a fate none could deny, but none could truly understand. Then, the galaxy trembled, for on the edge of the Macharius belt, the tomb of Nekrosor stirred. The ancient sarcophagus cracked, not with the ravages of time, but with deliberate awakening. From within, a shape emerged, half corpse and half celestial forge, eyes ablaze with the wrath of forgotten gods. The Destroyer, no longer a curse but a herald, walked again in the flesh, a living apocalypse embodying the torment of faith, the corruption of power, and a cosmic truth darker than the void between the stars. His first breath echoed through the warp, a harbinger of transformation that would rend destiny itself, whispering with unholy clarity, "The curse is eternal, and so is the king who bears it." Beneath the blackened skies of Grathel Prime, the air hung heavy with ash and the scent of burning sanctity. Brother Captain Malrek stood upon the shattered ramparts, his gaunted hands clenched tight around a relic bolter, its barrels cold beneath the dying light. Memories of oaths once sworn to the Emperor now clashed violently with the fractured truth laid bare by the Curse of Nekrosor. Each lost brother was a wound carved into his spirit, a silent gravestone marking faith eroded by betrayal. As orbital lances began their slow descent, the weight of duty collapsed inward, suffocating like the thick smoke that choked the battlefield below. His final prayer was no longer for victory, but for absolution from a war that devoured meaning with every breath. Elsewhere, Sister Superior Miriam knelt in the ruins of the Zephyrin convent, fingers tracing the etched sigils of a forgotten faith. The words she whispered were heavy with grief laments for souls condemned by doctrine and desperation alike. The penitent veil's teachings burned deep into her bones, questioning the very nature of salvation in a universe devoid of mercy. She recalled faces of pilgrims lost to both plague and Puritan zeal, martyrs to a cause that seemed, in the end, indistinguishable from madness. Her faith was a fragile ember in a world drowned by celestial storm, a torment forged in silence and shadow. With each breath, she wrestled demons unseen, those born of old lies and new betrayals. High above the shattered forge gloom, Magos Zelther orchestrated a ritual amid the groaning machinery, sparks of forbidden energy illuminating his stained robes like dying stars. The Omnissiah's sacred patterns unraveled under his touch, revealing the dread architecture beneath the encoded curse, the inevitability sewn into the machine's heart. His cohorts trembled as he commanded forces that could rend the fabric of reality itself, but the price loomed: a descent into mechanized madness that would leave no mind unscathed. In his delirium, Zelther glimpsed the destroyer's final form, a monstrous synthesis of flesh and cogitum, heralding a transformation that defied both science and faith. The ritual was poised to unlock Forbidden's transcendence, but at the cost of all he had once held sacred. Within the war-torn corridors of the Black Covenant flagship, the Psyker's screams rose and fell like the distant tides of a dying warp storm. Her fractured mind shimmered with visions. The cosmic fracture deepened, spreading rot across the shimmer of reality. The voice she bore was a symphony of destruction and rebirth, promising salvation through oblivion. Around her, voices of ancient saints and maddened warlords blended, proclaiming the curse not a malady but a chosen path, a crucible of mind and matter forged to birth an unseen god. Her final scream shattered steel and bone alike, a psychic howl that echoed beyond the stars. The fleet's command was lost in the psychic maelstrom, their fates consumed by a destiny none could halt or understand. On Terra, in a vault hidden beneath labyrinthine libraries, piled with centuries of secrets, Cardinal Veridanus collapsed amidst scattered scrolls, the weight of revelation crushing what remained of his faith. The curse was not a mere weapon, it was an inheritance, a lineage of sin etched into the blood and bone of the Imperium's highest. His hands trembled as he grasped the terrible gambit, played behind closed doors, eternal sacrifice masked as divine will. The silence of the after-hours library was suffocating, broken only by the whisper of falling dust. His oath to protect the Imperium was now a chain binding him to an endless cycle of betrayal and concealment, a twilight of faith begging to be set aflame by truth. Captain Ilara Voss surveyed the ruined warzone of Jeratha IV, each step weighed with the sorrow of impossible choices. Her men, corrupted and broken, were no longer warriors but echoes, their bodies vessels of the destroyer's defilement. Her last orders, a blight of grim strategy and final mercy, hung heavy in the air. Flashbacks of brothers lost, and the hollow eyes that betrayed their souls, clashed violently with her relentless will to fight. The cost of survival was no longer measured in lives, but in what remained of her own humanity. Each command was a prayer unanswered, a lament for a war where honor had dissolved into cold necessity. Adrift within the void, the ancient derelict whispered its secrets in the language of rusted echoes and fading light. The Samadican's hymn twisted into a lament for the dead, a requiem for flesh surrendered to machine. Servitors and horrors merged in baleful union, their tortured cries a testament to the Imperium's forgotten sins. Here lay a truth no sacred text could cleanse. The destroyer plague was the crucible of a new order, a crucifix for a heresy bound in circuits and sinew. Awaiting a hand to summon its wrath anew, this drifting tomb cast long shadows over the future, heralding a transformation that would rend the flesh of the galaxy and soul alike. On Zephyra, the pilgrims of the penitent veil gathered beneath blood-red skies, their voices raised in an eerie chorus of hope and despair. Veshkar's disciples embraced the curse not as blight but as blessing. Their bodies writhed with the warp-scarred promise of rebirth. Miriam's past prayers clashed with present rebellion in her heart as visions of transcendence danced on the edge of madness. Here, allegiance meant union with the destroyer's truth, an acceptance of dissolution and creation entwined. The pilgrimage was a march toward oblivion or awakening, and the path was stained with blood-borne conviction. The twilight of faith was no longer a whisper, but a storm gathering beneath the dying heavens. Within the gilded chambers of the High Lords, tension suffocated every breath. The Custodes' emissary's revelation ignited a slow-burning inferno beneath layered veils of political deceit. The Imperium's sacred trust, a fragile pact forged in lies and fear, threatened to unravel, and with it, all order. Trusted alliances gave way to cold calculation as lords weighed the perils of truth against survival. The fate of billions hung precariously on secrets too monstrous to speak aloud. In this dance of treachery, no hand was clean, and the threshold of oblivion edged ever closer. The curse was no accident but design, and destiny's blade was already poised to fall. Canoness Valenia led the Shrine World's last crusade with a heart fractured beneath the Empire's weight. Her warriors, consumed by zeal and doubt, battled not only infection, but the poisonous seduction of despair. Visions of corrupted saints and fallen angels haunted her waking hours, each step a testament to the fragile balance between salvation and ruin. Her prayers were cries cast into the void, unanswered and growing colder. The purity she fought for was no longer divine grace, but a fleeting shadow, an ember flickering before the final and terrible winter. The path before her was a crucible of sacrifice, where even righteousness carried the seed of destruction. Within the Imperium's seething storm, Inquisitor Kaine's fragmented mind drifted between madness and revelation. His soul fractured upon the edge of cosmic understanding, glimpsing a design far older than any god or emperor. The Destroyer's curse was not an aberration, but a cornerstone of existence itself woven into the genesis of stars and the silence between them. His whisper was a warning carried upon the warp winds, a truth too vast to hold, too terrible to share. The cycle of decay and renewal was eternal, and humanity's place was neither master nor victim but fleeting shadow. The abyss stared back with eyes aglow, and Kaine's final thought was a prayer for forgetting. Then, the silent void burst with forbidden's life. From the cracked sarcophagus, Nekrosor emerged no longer a curse skulking in shadows, but apocalypse incarnate. Half machine, half decay, bearer of forgotten divinity and unholy might, his presence bent the fabric of reality itself. His first step echoed like thunder in the warp, a herald of ruin and revelation intertwined. The Destroyer's eyes burned with the memory of stars consumed and empires broken, a cosmic scourge burdened with eternal damnation. In that instant, the fate of the Imperium, the galaxy, and the very weave of creation hung suspended caught between despair and hope, as the endless war ushered in a darkness unlike any before. And as the first salvo of orbital bombardment tore through the stillness of Grathal Prime, a final whisper fractured the silence. One of the once loyal custodes, long thought stalwart, had fallen, his loyalty cleaved by the very curse he once vowed to destroy. The betrayal was not defiance, but transformation, the birth of a new herald for Nekrosor's inexorable tide. The storm was no longer coming. It had already arrived. The shattered sky over Grathal Prime cracked open, ignited by thunderous fire and the roar of orbital bombardment, a celestial drum beating doom. Brother Captain Malrek's command was a fragmented hymn amid chaos, each shout a prayer and each step a dirge. The ground beneath him heaved with the relentless advance of the Destroyer's augments horrors stitched from flesh and iron, their howls tearing at the soul's fragile refuge. Amidst the cacophony, Malrek's bolter spoke bitter justice. Yet even decades of war-hardened faith could not stem the tide. His mind fractured by grief and resolve, he clung to one truth: sacrifice was not death, but defiance. As the warhounds closed, his armor shattered, and his last breath passed as a whispered oath to a god no one truly understood anymore. In the dying glow of the Zephyran night, Sister Superior Miriam knelt before an altar broken but unbowed. Her hands, bloodied yet steady, traced glyphs older than the Imperium itself, words spoken beneath the stars, when gods were mortal and sins were seeds of stars. The penitent veil's chorus rose around her, voices torn between lament and revelry. The curse was salvation twisted by time's cruel hand, a cosmic covenant binding flesh to fate. Her final prayer was neither plea nor proclamation, but acceptance, acknowledging the fragile beauty in despair, and the paradox that to be saved, one must first be utterly broken. Mago Zelther's litany concluded in cacophony, arcane energies tearing the Forge world's core asunder, the ritual reaching its terrible climax. As the warp-tender machines cried digital hymns, the reality bent, pulsing with forbidden's life. Flesh and metal melded anew, and in the crucible of unholy creation emerged a titan born of curse and technology. The destroyer forged anew, a nebula of ruin wrapped in servitor bones. The price of enlightenment was madness and decayed flesh, yet Zelthar's final act was a sacrifice of self, becoming one with the aberrant divinity to anchor the breaking world. Faith shattered or ascended, no one could say which. Aboard the Black Covenant, the psychic storm raged to fever pitch, tearing minds and stars alike. The Psyker's final vision was of fracturing galaxy empires cleaving apart, faith bleeding foul and pure alike, and the destroyer's face in every dying sun. Her screams were both warning and benediction, fracturing the minds of friend and foe. The cosmic design revealed itself, not a curse, but a pattern of inevitable collapse and rebirth, written in the bones of creation. The storm swallowed her whole. Silence fell. What emerged was not human, not divine, but something beyond reckoning. Genesis and oblivion knit in a single breath. Within Terra's shadowed vaults, Cardinal Veridanus crumbled beneath the weight of revelation and guilt. His confession trembled through abafied halls, a litany of broken oaths and impossible choices. The Imperium was built on sacrifice, but also on the marrow of secrets, contracts made in darkness with entities older than stars. Curses born of hope turned to horror. His voice, barely a whisper, carried the understanding that salvation might be a lie, and damnation the true path. As his light faded, the vault's seals groaned, and distant alarms heralded the Empire's fracturing pulse. The cost of devotion was now inscribed in every shattered world. Captain Alara Voss surveyed the corpses that had once been her regiment, a mosaic of lost souls trapped between salvation and plague. Her final stand was a bloody elegy, the field soaked in betrayal and merciless resolve. The destroyer's touch had reshaped warriors into revenants of fury and despair, and Voss, shattered but unyielding, carried the last spark of hope aloft like a martyr's flame. Every bullet fired, every brother fallen, was a note in the requiem of an age. Her whispered benediction was not for the dead, but for the broken earth beneath their feet, a promise that even in silence, the fight endured. The ancient derelict, suffused with dark psalmody, stirred from its slow decay. Its grotesque denizens, half machine, half spirit, emerged as heralds of transformation, messengers for a new dawn forged in the crucible of ruin. The ship itself pulsed, a living wound in the fabric of the void, prepared to unleash its blasphemous gospel across star systems unready for its arrival. Its quiet approach carried the weight of forgotten apocalypses, a harbinger not of destruction alone, but of metamorphosis, an unspoken promise that nothing would remain untouched by the destroyer's hand. In Zephyra's blood-red twilight, the pilgrims of the penitent veil danced on the threshold between despair and transcendence. Veshkar, their broken prophet, embodied the terrible beauty of the curse, both savior and ruin. The ritual bound souls to the cosmic cycle, weaving flesh into the eternal fabric of stars and shadows. Miriam's heart, torn in battle between duty and revelation, beat with somber understanding. Salvation might be found in surrender, or in embracing the darkness that threatened to consume all. Their march was an elegy in motion, a slow unraveling of the Imperium's last fragile hope. In the High Lord's sanctum, the web of conspiracy tightened as trust crumbled to ash. The custody's emissary's confession was a blade cutting through veils of pride and deception, kings and cardinals hiding behind lies to preserve what could not be saved. The destroyer plague was the Imperium's doom and safeguard, a double-edged birthright none dared claim openly. The room trembled with silence, the weight of legions unborn pressing on conscience and ambition alike. As power shifted behind thickened veils, one truth shone relentless. The Empire was an edifice built on the bones of betrayal, and it would fall or rise by a will older than mankind. Canoness Valenia's crusade became a symphony of sacrifice, her warriors falling like stars snuffed by cold voids. Her prayers fractured into screams as visions showed her the futility of endless, war-holy purity tainted by the very rot they fought against. Each step forward was a march toward oblivion, every fallen sister a testament to fragile hope bowed beneath cosmic despair. The weight of her conviction wavered as the destroyer's shadow stretched farther, swallowing light and spirit alike. In the final hour, she faced the terrible question: was she a savior or a herald of ruin? Lost in the infinite torment of the warp, Inquisitor Kaine's shattered soul became a beacon of fractured prophecy, a shattered mirror reflecting the galaxy's unraveling. The cosmic design emerged in jagged glimpses, a universe born to fall and rise in endless cycles of war and decay. His dying invocation was both curse and blessing, whispered through rifts unseen. The destroyer's touch was entwined with fate itself, a mark not only of doom but of dark transcendence. The stars themselves seemed to listen and shudder as the veil between creation and oblivion thinned. And then, the apocalypse made flesh strode forth. Nekrosor, the destroyer born anew from ruin and fire, wore the scars of galaxies forgotten and legends broken. His voice, both thunder and whisper, shook the fabric of time, a litany of endings and beginnings intertwined in eternal curse. His first step fractured the immaterium, a fracture felt deep in the soul of every living being, a cosmic reckoning made manifest. The heavens wept fire, and the cosmos held its breath. The war was no longer a battle of armies, but of destiny and oblivion merged in unstoppable storm. As silence settled over the wreckage, a last shattering truth burst forth. A custodes, once the emblem of unyielding loyalty, lifted his visor to reveal eyes alight with the curse's unholy fire. His fall was not defiance, but transformation, a new harbinger born of the ancient plague, an echo of Nekrosor's eternal will. The sky broke with rumble and ruin as the storm consumed them all. Fate's final thread was pulled taut, and the Imperium's future hung upon that fractured hinge poised between relentless darkness and a dawn no soul dared envision. The blackened remains of Grathel Prime lay still beneath a starless sky, its once proud spires shattered into jagged silhouettes against the void. Silent banners, torn and faded, whispered mournful tales in the cold wind, a requiem for legions of faith and steel long fallen. The cathedral ruins bore witness to prayers unanswered and hopes consigned to ash, their pillars cracked like broken oaths. Here, amid the desolation, the imprint of the Curse of Nekrosor lingered, not as a tale of conquest, but as a shadow carved into the marrow of history. The battlefield, strewn with husks and relics of forgotten courage, offered no triumph, only a solemn testament that even gods and emperors cannot bend the relentless march of decay. Far beyond, in the hushed sanctuaries of the penitent and damned, voices rose faintly soft hymns woven from despair and remembrance. Sister Superior Miriam's final testament was a silent echo in these halls, a lament for those lost in faith's fracturing crucible. The penitent veil's rites shimmered faintly under waxing moons, bound by sorrow and a fragile hope that perhaps, in surrender, there might lie redemption or awakening. Yet the questions remained. Was salvation a flame to clutch or a shadow to release? And in a galaxy bereft of certainty, what price must souls pay to endure the endless night? On Terra, the archives whispered deeper secrets, their hololiths flickering with ancient truths too potent to fully grasp or bear. Cardinal Veridanus's confessions lay buried beneath edicts and silence, sealed by those who would protect or bury the past. The inexorable spiral of lies and sacrifice had writhed itself into the bloodline of the Imperium, an inheritance heavier than any crown. Through corridors once hallowed by light, the faintest whisper stirred. Had humanity been saved, or merely shackled tighter by invisible chains? And if the Emperor's silence was not mercy, what was it but a void into which hope had been cast? Beneath the dying shine of the Astronomicon, Canoness Valenia's crusade ended not with victory but a quiet exodus, a dwindling flame beneath a broken sky. Her sisters carried the weight of shattered faith and fractured purpose, their pilgrim shadows stretching long into the indefinite dusk. Each step taken was both an act of defiance and a dirge, the countless fallen nodes of light moldering in forgotten cemeteries. As they vanished into the abyss, only the faintest embers hinted at remembrance, a fragile thread woven through the endless tapestry of loss. What remained was a solemn question. Can the light survive when all who bear it are but ghosts beneath the stars? Within the warped echoes of the Mechanicum's ruined halls, Magos Zelther's sacrifice had forged not salvation, but a memory cast in iron and madness. The titan born of flesh and cogitator dreams lingered like a specter, a paradox of hope and horror crystallized into silent legend. The machinery hummed a requiem, echoing across lifeless halls, as the fabric of reality bore the scars of forbidden knowledge. The question endured, a question beyond equations or liturgy, of what it meant to be truly alive or truly broken in a universe ravaged by cosmic deceit and divine silence. Upon the drift and decay of the Black Covenant's shattered fleet, the remnants of the Psyker's vision whispered a haunting lament through the endless dark. A cosmic design laced with decay and renewal, wound into the stars themselves, unfolded beyond comprehension. Yet in the silence that followed, no answer came, only the silent weight of inevitability, a pattern without beginning or end. The void remained indifferent, a cold testament to the frailty of hope born by flesh and spirit. Was existence itself a curse barely born, or the final gift of a universe indifferent to mercy? On Zephyra's twilight plains, the pilgrims of the penitent veil moved as shadows among ruins, their whispered liturgy a fragile bond between despair and transcendence. Veshkar's legacy had become myth, their ritual dance a quiet surrender to fate's distant, unknowable design. The stars above burned cold witness to a faith transformed, no longer imperial creed, but primal yearning, a communion between soul and abyss. In their silence, questions lingered. Is the price of survival eternal submission, or the final sacrifice in search of freedom? And what does it mean to endure when all that once was sacred lies broken in the dust? Within Terra's council chambers, the High Lord's game dissolved beneath the weight of fractured trust and ancient treacheries. The Custodes' fallen herald was a ghostly symbol of the Empire's unraveling, a reminder that even the mightiest are not immune to corruption or transformation. Beneath veils of power, despair festered, and fragile hopes gave way to harsher truths whispered in shadowed Congress. The Empire's grand design had faltered, reshaped by secrets buried too long. The question now hung between daggered words and steel. If truth is a weapon and loyalty a chain, then what destiny remains for those who survive the breaking of worlds? Amongst the silent stars, the shattered legions and fading banners of countless campaigns marked a tale not of conquest, but of slow, relentless forgetting. Where once were hymns of glory, now echoed dirges of loss, a requiem for a dying age. The destroyer's shadow reached beyond flesh and machine, bending the cosmos to its inexorable rhythm. Faith danced on the edge of oblivion, flickering weak against the eternal night, and the memory of hope became a fragile bone buried beneath millennia of war and silence. The galaxy itself seemed to sigh, a breath held long and deep, then slowly released. In the quiet aftermath, the final remembrancer recorded these lost truths in trembling script, his words a fragile bridge between the fallen and the living. His chronicle was not a declaration, but a whisper carried on the wind, a solemn invitation to remember and bear witness. No promises were made, no answers claimed, only the cold beauty of uncertainty edged with sorrow. Was the Emperor's will eternal flame or fading echo? Were the destroyer's curses lessons or omens? These were questions left to the silence beyond stars, where gods do not tread. With the galaxy steeped in twilight and the ghosts of countless souls drifting like dust through forgotten halls of power, a final fragile plea remains. Stand witness. Engage, remember, and bear the weight of these stories through the endless dark. For in bearing witness, there is a spark and ember waiting to endure beyond the end of all things. If this chronicle stirred your spirit, we invite you to like, subscribe, and join the circle of remembrance. Tell us your thoughts, your hopes, your fears in the comments below. The saga is eternal, and it lives wherever memory survives.